Hello everyone and welcome to another I Pick My Butt video. More Archero today, and in this video we're going to be talking about how to complete Chapter 18. And I'm going to hit you with a question right away. Do you consider the game completed when you beat the final chapter? Or are you one where you believe that you have to beat it in hero mode in order to get that status? Or even better, are you an extremist where you need to get every single item, hero, and everything else maxed out to its best in order to call the game completed? Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you haven't made it to Chapter 18 yet, there's a couple of things you should know. First of all, 20 stages. If you can see here on stage 1, we're going to have 25 waves. Every single wave, we're going to have more enemies pop up every 3 seconds. Now, in the beginning stages, you are only going to have 1 at a time, but later on, you could have 2, 3, 4, maybe even 5 enemies pop out in 1 wave at a time. After each board, you're going to get a chance with the angel, and then on every 5, 10, 15, and 20, we're going to have bosses. Now, the crazy part is when you get to 16, 17, and 18, you don't get an angel on those. That's just going to be an exact wave after wave after wave, finished by a final angel, and then going into the final bosses. And better yet, the bosses come in waves 2 of 3. Now, we are introduced to a couple new characters here, or enemies, whatever you want to call them. The first one you probably saw is the skeleton graveyard thingamagobber with his hand sticking out right there with those lasers shooting out. They're a pain. And as you've heard me say before about micro-stepping, I would call this macro-stepping. Now, obviously, stutter stepping, that's going to be flicking your finger to reset the animations on the screen. Micro-stepping, that's what I call moving a little bit and shooting. But macro-stepping, because of these laser things, you're going to want to move actually about 2 tiles. So once the screen gets overpowered with these guys, you really can't see what's going on. You want to try to move about 2 tiles at a time, shoot, move 2 tiles again. Obviously, in these beginning here, I couldn't beat this game or even get close to it getting through the first couple levels unless I had diagonal arrow. So the first couple of stages seem to be pretty easy because I can pretty much kill that first enemy before the next one pops up. Another big thing that you want to do is you always want to keep your eyes on when that next one pops up in case it is one of those little skeleton tombstone things. Let me know what you call them because I really don't know what to call them. But on top of this, we do have one other enemy that's new to this, and that's kind of these blue frozen wolves. And I actually thought that there were 2 separate enemies, but once I watched this a little closer, I realized that they were one and the same. Now, you're going to have it do either one of 2 things. First, it's going to charge at you and do kind of like the wolf boss does, charge at you 3 times. Or the second, it's going to do the leaping jump at you. And as long as you kind of step out of the way of the leaping one, you can just kind of shotgun it, which means you're standing right next to him and pumping your lead right into him, and that's enough to get rid of him. But like I said, if you're not watching him, one of those skeleton things could easily beam you, so you got to keep on moving and be on your toes. Now, as far as the main ALE item that I got rid of on this, well, that was my ancient legendary bull ring. And although I was doing 7,600 base damage, I was doing about 8,400 to the mobs themselves. But the mobs weren't the problem that I ran into the game. It actually was the bosses. I mean, don't get me wrong, having that 8,400 to go towards the mobs was a great help and it did make things easier. But with the bosses coming in waves, well, I'll give you a patented I Pick My Butt system here. If you're facing 1 boss, it's okay. If you're facing 2 bosses, it's a little iffy. If you're facing 3 bosses, well, you're dead. So the goal for me is to try to kill the first boss as fast as I can and hopefully get it before the second one spawned. For me, I switched over to 2 perfect epic lion rings, and where I did lose that 800 plus attack damage towards the mobs, I did increase 300 attack damage just from the attack plus 5% from the ring buff. Now, as far as the actual bosses now, I'm doing an additional 1100, that 300 plus 400 from each ring, and that's where I was really struggling, is nailing these bosses down fast enough. Where I was fighting all 3 of them at once before, now I'm actually having them under control, and that's how I was able to accomplish this. And I will say, I have seen those posts out there comparing DPS of 2 bulls versus 2 lions versus 1 bull and 1 lion, and people still asking, which one do I go for? What do I do? Well, here's my solution for you. Go in with 1 bull and 1 lion. Play it like 5 times. Wherever you're struggling with, if you're struggling on the mobs, then go and put 2 bull rings on. If you're struggling with the bosses, put 2 lion rings on. And if everything seems pretty even Steven, just run with 1 of each. That's the best advice I can give you, and I think it'll work. So you saw the bosses at stage 5 there. We actually got the candle boss, the ice magma, and the fire magma. but a couple other ones you might run into are these ones right here. In this run, I actually had the kitty version of the Skeleton Mage in the iced form and the normal form, Tornado Joe, and then we also had the Elder version of him too. And at stage 5, it seemed like I was either getting the first 3 or the second 3. Nothing really changed from that. But luckily, you should be used to all these bosses by now. As far as the abilities that I got in this, obviously Diagonal Arrow was a huge plus, and having Ricochet definitely helps too. Now I was lucky enough, after I got my level up to max, I was able to get a multi-shot from the Book of Enlightenment. Talk about lucky. Headshot was another great one, along with Wingman, but it really seemed like what I was going for is the basic things for a staff user: multi-shot, diagonal, and ricochet. Now, I know other people have beaten this using the Death Scythe, mainly because of the 30% killing or reduction. Once it gets to 30% health or less, you have the chance to headshot, which is a huge help with the mobs. Other people I've heard of were using the dodge build, so all things to keep in mind. You don't actually have to use the staff on this, but it worked for me at about 8,000 attack. When it came to stage 10, the bosses I ran into this one was the red dragon, the yellow dragon, and the purple dragon, aka the pigs. And this was the easier one of what I found for the bosses at this stage. The other ones though were actually 2 separate types of wolves and then the spider. Now the wolves themselves, the first one would do his dash 4 times instead of the 3, but the other one would just pounce around 3 times. So a jump, jump, and then stationary. But for some reason they really seem to be packed with hit points, and if I ran into them, I was really struggling to kill them before the second one came out. Throw a spider in there on top of it, and it could really be trouble. Remember my patented rule. And that brings me to my next point of when facing the bosses, try to stay stationary as much as you can and just fire off those shots. With the wolves, having one that dashes and the other one that bounces, well, that makes it where you're constantly running, giving more time for the bosses not to die and the next wave to come out, bringing a third boss. Going into stage 15, I landed the Hell Creeper in Fire version, Ice version, and then a Fire Lizard. Now the harder, I would probably say, would be the Giant Bee, and then the Ice Dragonfly and the Fire Dragonfly. Although the Ice version really isn't too bad because the screen is so long that those blue projectiles usually end up exploding before they get near you. They usually go off the wall, so you don't have to really worry about dodging them at all. As far as the final stage, they always seem to be the same. It was always the Succubus, the Demon, and the Fire Demon. And they did change in the order that they popped out. Luckily for me, I got the Succubus first here, which seemed to pretty much drop pretty easily. I just had to keep my distance because he will do that dash at you and really screw you up. As far as the Demon with his kind of pentagon type dragon thing, he's the one I would probably say to be most concerned about. And the Fire Demon, well, we face him in all sorts of events all the time, so he really seemed easy for me. But let me know if you guys had any boss combinations that I didn't have that I mentioned here. Love to share it with other people. All I can say is I'm so happy I beat this chapter, especially with an update probably coming right around the corner. Pay attention for that. We'll post another video about that stuff, probably. But let me know what you guys think. Don't forget, like, subscribe, and remember, I pick my butt.